Thank you for joining us today for our Parkinson's Disease in the News, a fireside chat. Today, we welcome Dr. Salina Schaefer, a movement disorder neurologist here at the Muhammad Ali Parkinson Center and an assistant professor in the Department of Neurology at Barrow Neurological Institute. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Schaefer.
Hi guys, my pleasure. Thank you, Christina, for the kind introduction. There's a lot going on in the news for Parkinson's, so I kind of wanted to start off with a overview of Parkinson's, how the medications have evolved over the time, and then our deep brain stimulation, because there are new medications and new deep brain stimulation advancements going on here. So first and foremost, I kind of want to take a step back, and I know you guys already know this, but just so we're on the same page. My spiel will not take 200 years, but it started 200 years ago. So 200 years ago, there was a doctor named James Parkinson, and he was examining people, and three people he examined, three people he saw on the street, and they all had similar symptoms. And that is, if you guys have been in our clinics, you know how we do these funny tests. Those are the tests that he was doing. And he basically determined, hey, they all look kind of alike. They all have similar symptoms, wrote a paper off of these 6 people. He called this syndrome the shaking palsy, or paralysis agitans. He didn't really know what it was, and he just wrote a paper describing it. Published that paper, and then other people started to say they are saying the same thing. So they weren't sure what this thing was. They termed it the shaking palsy. Many years later, it was called Parkinson's. 60, so that's 200 years ago. 60 years ago, forgive me for getting a little gross, but there was a pathologist doing autopsies on brains and recognized that people with known diagnoses of Parkinson's, an area of their brain was different than other people's. And that area that's called the substantia nigra. It means black substance. So this is the area, it's literally a black line in the back part of our brain in the brainstem. And so then he started to wonder, okay, what is this black line? Do we have something regarding this funny syndrome? So again, going back, they started looking at what is this thing? And this is where dopamine is made. So dopamine is a chemical that our brain makes. In the back part goes to the middle part, and it kind of is the push start to the motor circuits of our brain. So that's when they figured out, gosh, okay, there is this funny chemical called dopamine. And clearly this is something that is missing in the world of Parkinson's. It's either missing or people that have Parkinson's don't make enough of it. The basic scientists recognized you cannot get dopamine past the blood-brain barrier. And so they started to figure out, how do we give medication to people? How do we get dopamine into people, right? And so what they did is they said, okay, if dopamine can't cross the blood-brain barrier, what can? And this was the invention of that drug, carbidopa-levodopa. Levodopa, L-dopa, that is the active drug. So L-dopa is the precursor to dopamine, and that will cross the blood-brain barrier. So what they figured out along the way is if you give people levodopa, it will push past the blood-brain barrier, get into the brain, and is metabolized to dopamine. So carbidopa, if you guys know, your drug is called carbidopa-levodopa, right? It's 2 drugs in one. And so what they figured out is carbidopa acts like a vehicle that allows levodopa to get to the brain, more levodopa. And so it's the vehicle pushes more levodopa into the brain, levodopa is metabolized to dopamine, and that's what runs the motor circuits. Along the way, again, this drug was invented, this was 60 years ago. So your immediate release carbidopa-levodopa, that yellow pill that we give you, it gives you, forgive the finger drawing, it gives you a big up ramp. So you swallow the pill. It takes about 20 minutes to get down to the area of the intestines that it needs to metabolize. And then it starts this big up ramp of dopamine inside your body. And it climbs here to about the peak in about an hour, 3.5 to 4 hours, it's out of your body. Most people love to be in that upper region of the peak. This is where you get all the good benefit of dopamine. You speed up, your tremor is better, you feel better. Since the invention of this drug 60 years ago, they've tried to match that peak and have it last all day long, and just give you a nice steady state in that peak region. And they've never been able to do it. And the reason why I'm going down this road is because we think we're getting there. So to talk through the different medications really quick, about 25 years ago, carbidopa-levodopa controlled release was released. And this drug even though it sounds like it's going to be an extended release, it doesn't work that way. It gives you a little steady state of dopamine for about 5 to 6 hours. So instead of being all the way up here, you're way down here with your dopamine. And this is where most people don't like taking that pill during the day. We use it at night. If your feet are cramping, your legs are cramping, or your toes are curling, that's what we use the controlled release for. In 2015, Amneal, who makes Rytary, they released Rytary in 2015. And Rytary is a combination of controlled release and immediate release put into a capsule. And they thought that it would give you that big up boost and last all day. And it doesn't do that. It gives you a bit of a ramp, and then it brings you back down. What I personally use Rytary for is people that need a higher peak than controlled release, but they need less of a peak. They kind of want to be right in that middle region. They need less of a peak than immediate release, and that's what I use Rytary for. You guys, I think, have already been told about Crexont. What happened with Crexont, Amneal went back to the drawing board in 2015 and said, why doesn't their drug work the way that they thought it should? And so they went back to the drawing board and they created a new drug called Crexont. And Crexont was released a few months back, so I think you guys have already heard about it. But what Crexont does, they did this very elegant study, Amneal did. And since the invention of carbidopa-levodopa 60 years ago, carbidopa and levodopa peak at the same time. And Amneal kind of went back and they said, so if carbidopa is the vehicle, shouldn't carbidopa peak first and then levodopa peak? And that's what they invented with Crexont. So carbidopa peaks first, then levodopa peaks. More levodopa is getting to the brain because carbidopa is peaking first, and that gives you Crexont. So what Crexont does is it gives you that big peak in the beginning, and then you volley for about 5 to 6 hours, and then it drops you down. And so this has been out for a few months now. All insurances are covering it. We are having to jump through some hoops, and that most of the time you need to just try immediate release carbidopa-levodopa first. Some people are needing to try Rytary first, depending on your insurance. So that jumps to the new future. The new future are these insulin pumps. If you guys have heard of insulin pumps are pumps that you can wear for people that have diabetes. They're pumps that you can wear, and instead of taking pills, or people that have diabetes, they inject themselves with insulin all the time. So instead of wearing or injecting, instead of taking pills or injecting with insulin, you can actually wear a device. So if you guys have seen some of those glucose monitors, that's monitoring people that have diabetes, that's monitoring their glucose, their sugars, and then they wear an insulin pump that infuses insulin. It's about the size of a pager, has a little tiny sticker with a little tiny fiber needle attached to it. You slap it on in the morning, you really don't feel the needle go in, and you wear it all day. Somebody had the brilliant idea of taking the insulin out of the insulin pump and putting dopamine into it, and it works fabulously. They've had this in Europe and in Japan. It's been on market for a while now, and it's starting to take the place of the oral pills out in Europe and Japan. And so there's one pump, it's called Vialove in the United States. It was released about 2 months ago. Vialove is a insulin pump. It is, again, they put dopamine into it, and it's about the size of a 1980s cell phone. So it's about, forgive the microphone, but it's about this big. And so they're giving, you wear it with, you can't wear it on your belt buckle. You can wear it basically in a fanny pack. And instead of taking pills all day, it replaces all of your pills. So your carbidopa-levodopa, it will replace all of the chemicals. So even Aslect, all the other ones that you're taking as well, it tends to replace those. So you can wear this, it microdoses dopamine all day long, subcutaneously. So instead of going up and down all day, you have a lovely steady state of dopamine all day. Again, most people like it. In the US, you know how this works. We need to get insurance coverage. So if you guys are 53 and below and you're on commercial insurance, the company that makes Vialove, which is AbbVie, they will give you the device for free. And they give you the device for about 2 years. Commercial insurance, if you are 53 and above on commercial insurance, it's a little hard to get, but we can still get it. And then Medicare is not agreed to cover it yet. We're looking for the next couple months that Medicare is going to kick in and start to cover. For those of you on VA insurance, sometimes we can get it, sometimes we can't. So it all just depends on your VA and your coverage. Now, what was just actually 2 weeks ago, what hit the news is another drug, and it's another pump. And this pump is actually much smaller. It's about this big, and it holds something called Apokyn. Apokyn is something called a dopamine agonist. So it looks like dopamine to the brain, but not. Apokyn was actually around before they were figuring out carbidopa-levodopa. They just never figured out how to stabilize it. And so that's why it's never actually been a big player in the Parkinson's world. We have Apokyn in an EpiPen, so it's a rescue pen. So you can actually inject yourself with it, really like an EpiPen, but it only lasts for about an hour the way it was formulated. Now it's coming out in a pump. It was FDA approved 2 weeks ago. We're looking, it is not out on market. It is not covered by insurance yet. We're looking probably Q2, quarter two, fiscal, that it will be covered by commercial insurance and probably a few months later for Medicare. And again, what it does is it's quite small. You can fit it on your belt buckle or in your pocket, and it infuses Apokyn, and it microdoses it all day long. This drug, again, so going to the dopamine agonist class, this chemical looks so much like dopamine. It's not dopamine because there's an added piece to it, but it attaches to the. Good question. I'll get to that in just a second. Sorry, the questions popped up and I get distracted, so I'll address that in just 1 second. So the Apokyn, what it does is the chemical attaches to the receptor of dopamine and it tricks the brain into thinking it's getting dopamine. Apokyn looks so much like dopamine, though, that it doesn't really come with all the side effects that the broader class of dopamine agonists do. And so that's where most people really, really do like Apokyn pump. It's been out in Europe for a while now. Again, in Europe, they're using mostly the pumps instead of the oral pills. So these will be coming to market soon. The question that I got a little distracted by, can you use the pumps with DBS? Yes. So that is where all this is going. So if you have DBS and you want to use the pump instead of oral pills, absolutely easily used. And again, the beautiful thing about the pumps is you can put them on, take them off, you can go back to orals, you can do what you want with them. In the trial, going back to the BioLove, in the trial, most people wore the sticker for 5 days. So they actually wore the whole pump for 5 days and then switched the site. Where you put it on is basically on the abdomen region. And so you would switch each site for every 5 days. What they found in the trial is when you switch it every 5 days, if you have that sticker attached, it causes some skin irritation. So when the trial ended, again in Europe and Japan, this is out on market. In Europe and Japan, they switch the site every day, and it works beautifully. There's no skin irritation. Again, the way that I usually will say to use it is, take it. Some people take it off at night, some people wear it at night, depending on how active your nights are. But if you're going to take a shower, take it off before you take a shower, and then put it on after you take the shower. Again, the beautiful things about the pumps as well that I haven't addressed, you get control. So you get this nice you get this steady state of microdosing all day. Say you're more active and you need more dopamine, you get control. And so you get to increase your amount of dopamine. So you bring that level up here and then you go across. Say you're nice and relaxed and you need less dopamine, you're here, you can just drop your dopamine yourself, which is just fabulous. Or in case of the other pump, your Apokyn. So that's where we are on the medications. So you have 3 new medications. There's Crexont, which has been out. You have VioLove, which is now out. And then you have the one that is coming from, it will be out soon. It's just not yet. So that will be coming as the Apokyn pump. Going to DBS. So the new stuff that's coming in deep brain stimulation. So going from our oral pills to our more advanced. To give a brief history regarding deep brain stimulation. It has been out for over 30 years. It's one of our more advanced treatments that we use for Parkinson's. And to walk you through the history, I'm going to give you a quick history lesson today. So it is not research. This has been out for a very long time. And what has gone on, so take you back through about 50 or 60 years ago, there was a surgeon. So the story goes, this is a little bit of folklore, but the surgeon was doing surgery, the neurosurgeon was doing brain surgery on somebody that had tremor. He was doing surgery for another reason. Accidentally cut a blood vessel, had to burn that blood vessel, which burns tissue in the brain. And after he fixed that, he woke the person up to basically figure out what happened, to apologize and explain what happened, and their tumor was gone. And so that spawned what we call the thalamotomies and the pallidotomies. So way back then, you would take off part of the skull, you could burn part of the brain, put the skull back on, and that would stop people's tremors. To talk about Michael J. Fox. Michael J. Fox has not had deep brain stimulation. He had a pallidotomy. So again, they took off part of his skull, burned part of his brain, put his skull back on. So that was way back then. Then the technology advanced. For those of you who've heard of Gamma Knife, Gamma Knife is a laser beam. It's not a knife. We use it in treatment of cancers, things like that. And what they found along the way is, hey, we don't need to cut. We can use the laser beam and basically program it for the tissue of the brain and burn where the area of the tumor is coming from. Gamma Knife has a few downsides to it. Excuse me. Number one, it takes a good 6 months, so it's an educated guess how much the surgeons actually need to burn, and so they have an educated guess. They burn that area, and then over 6 months you start to see your tumor go away. The other downside of Gamma Knife, through a lot of research, you don't do both sides and you don't really repeat it. And you don't do that because you can cause a lot of damage, and you can stop people from speaking or from walking. So in the United States, we don't do it. Years ago, actually, I was at a conference and I met a surgeon from Egypt. And back then, Egypt did not have deep brain stimulation. So he was actually at the conference to learn it so he could take it back to Egypt. And they were actually repeating Gamma Knife and doing both sides. And they were running into a lot of issues like we had in the research. So that was, again, a long time ago. Over 30 years ago came deep brain stimulation, and that's the brain implant that we use for Parkinson's and for other disorders. Again, I'm going to get a little gross, apologies. But what we do is we take a small piece out of your skull and we drop electrodes inside your brain, put a battery inside the chest. It's all internalized. And then we put everything back together. So, and then here at Barrow, some people historically the surgery was done awake. So we open your skull up a little bit, we go inside your brain, and we wake you up, and we have you do different tasks. And we're listening for the nuclei. Every nuclei has a different sound, so that's why we historically used to wake you up during the surgery. We would have you do different things, and then find where we need to be, and then have you go back asleep as we finish the whole surgery. Our surgery is now done asleep. Here at Barrow, we do it asleep, so you're asleep during the whole thing. We use image guiding to place it. And so this is where DBS has gone, where we can actually do both sides. It's all internal. And so you go home, you spend the night in the hospital, you go home the next day. Depending on insurance, we put the battery in the chest same time, or we have to wait, depending on what your insurance says, usually a few weeks. 4 weeks after the brain implant, so the surgeon places the implant, and then 4 weeks later, you come back to the neurologist, and we're the ones who turn it on. And basically, what the DBS is doing is it's working like electronic dopamine. So it's inside your brain, and we're turning on electricity and basically pushing that start button of the motor circuits with electricity itself, instead of chemicals, electricity. So way back 30 years ago when this came to market, what we could do is you had what we called a lead. So forgive the finger again, but you have a lead and there's 4 electrodes. So if you pretend my finger is the lead, and you have 4 electrodes on that lead. And what we can do is we can bounce electricity from either from the electrodes to electrodes, or we bounce electricity from the battery to the electrodes, again, all internal. And we're trying to cover that area of the brain that's causing tremor, and we're trying to stop the tremor. It used to be years ago that if you know somebody that had deep brain stimulation 30 years ago, um, everyone had a kind of a mechanical voice. And if we use such stimulation, we can really change the speech, and we can make people really stiff to stop tremor or to stop other issues coming from Parkinson's. That was changed about a decade ago. Another company got in the research, and they really revolutionized how this was done. And this company, what they did is, instead of having the electrodes just go straight across the lead, they wrapped it around the lead, and then they segmented it. And so what we can do now for the last decade is we can actually shape waves of electricity. And that has changed, where we don't change the speech, and we don't really make a lot of people stiff with the deep brain stimulator. And so it has really revolutionized how we program and what we do with it. So there are 3 companies in the United States that do this. I'm going to list them. There's Medtronic, there's Abbott, and there's Boston Scientific. And these are the 3 companies that are listed in the United States that do this. Europe has other companies, and they are looking to come to the US. So some of the newest research are Europe's devices. Some of them are a little bit more advanced, some of them are not, and they are all looking to come to the United States. So that's what we're looking at research. This will be research phase of implanting what Europe has in Americans, and just again, it's been proven in Europe, so it's not really research, but we always have to prove to the FDA that it works. And so that is one new study that's going to be happening. The beautiful thing that was actually announced on Monday is the FDA has now approved it's Medtronic's device has something new in it. And what has happened is Medtronic has been messing around like everyone else with artificial intelligence. So it's a little bit of artificial intelligence, not so much, but it's kind of the way that we think about it. It used to be kind of like what I said, you get the device implanted, and then what we do is the neurologist program. And believe it or not, you get a device too, just like with the insulin pumps. You get control, but we set the parameters. The doctor sets the parameters, and so you can only go up and down in the parameters that we give you. And so with the deep brain stimulator, as it sat as of last week, what would happen was I can give you a good program, and I give you a range of what you can program with. So if you're at home and you're saying, hey, I like this, and it's a steady state of electricity inside your brain, but hey, I want to go exercise, I want to go run a marathon, I want to go do something. You have a remote, and you can up-click your electricity to give you what you need to do what you want to do. Or say you're excited and your tremor is popping out more, you can increase your electricity on your own. You're at home, you're calm, you're collected, you're maybe in front of the TV getting ready to go to bed. You don't need that amount of stimulation, you decrease it on your own. Medtronic's current device, again, as it sat a week ago, it can read your brain waves. And this is new technology, in that the device, what it does is it communicates with your brain, the lead inside your brain, it communicates with your brain, and it reads what your brain is doing. And as it sat last week, I can actually monitor. So it records it, and I can monitor what your brain is doing. So say up here, your brain is doing this thing and you're tremoring, and down here, you're dyskinetic. And so it would give me a printout of what you're doing. And then I can do an educated guess of, okay, gosh, maybe here you're doing well. And then you need more ranges for me to go to cover your tremor and to cover your dyskinesia. And what is now, as of Monday, the FDA just released it, and it is a software upgrade for those of you who have deep brain stimulation, and in particular Medtronic. It's a software upgrade, not a hardware upgrade. What we can do is, now it's what we call closed loop. And so what closed loop means, and adaptive. Adaptive is where instead of you having to program it and you having to change your remote, it does it on its own. So it will read your brain waves, and if you're steady and all of a sudden you're up here and you're having a lot of tremor, the device itself will read that, and it will actually kick up its own stimulation. So you don't have to bother with it. It does it on its own. And say you're dyskinetic and you want to stop the dyskinesia, it actually will read that and it will decrease stimulation on its own. Or say you're up here and you're tremoring, it will increase, and then you've stopped tremoring, it will decrease on its own. So that was announced on Monday that is coming, and it will be out very, very shortly. So we're being told Medtronic is thinking maybe May is when, so the FDA did approve it. It's not fully released yet. So on May is when we plan for it to come out. And then they will be around. So if you have deep brain stimulation and you have Medtronic and you want that upgrade, they'll be around in the clinics to do the upgrade probably in May is what we're looking at. Those are the new things that are coming out. I'm aware Boston Scientific has their kind of answer to what's happening with Medtronic coming. So that will be for probably the next talk as all that information is just starting to leak out. That is what I have on the updates today. One thing I wanted to address, I got an email from Christina a little earlier, and she was talking, I guess she's getting a lot of questions about number one, death in Parkinson's. So I wanted to address that very quickly. I know it's a little of a heavy subject, but I think it needs to be addressed. Um, I know it's one of those things that we always say it, people don't die from Parkinson's, right? Um, Remember, there are different disorders out there. So there's Parkinson's and then there's those atypical disorders. I am only talking about Parkinson's here. You don't really die from Parkinson's. If you're going to die in relation to Parkinson's, it is typically either a fall. So say you fall and you're taking lots of falls and you strike your head or you break things, you break a hip, you end up in the hospital, and then it just kind of spirals from there. So that is typically the most common way. Second most common way is, again, swallowing incorrectly. If you keep swallowing incorrectly, it goes down into your lungs, you create pneumonia, you get sick, you get better, then you keep having that issue. Both of those are actually quite easily fixed, which is why we recommend so hard and so often physical therapy, exercise daily, the support groups, all of it, exercising mind, speech, body. And you want to be doing this daily. Most of my people who exercise daily and they're doing great, if they miss even one day, they notice that they're slowing down a little bit. Their gait is a little bit off. So to help fix the swallowing, if you're having swallowing issues, speech therapy. Speech therapy does a wonderful job in treating this. If you're having gait issues, if you're having lots of falls, physical therapy does a great job in fixing this. Perhaps an adjustment of medication. If you're dyskinetic and your feet are getting tied together with when you're walking and that's what's causing your falls, talk to your doctor about your medication and perhaps fixing your meds. Also, the big thing that I don't think a lot of people talk about with falls is blood pressure. Be aware, Parkinson's over time lowers blood pressure, as does the medication. And so what we recommend is if you're falling a lot because you feel dizzy, we ask that you check what's called orthostatic blood pressures. Orthostatic blood pressures are when we're seated, it's very easy for our heart to pump blood to our brain. When we stand up, happens in everyone. Gravity takes effect, blood pools in the legs, and blood pressure drops. Those of us without Parkinson's, our heart is connected to that drop, right? And our heart will pick up speed, raise our blood pressure, and our brain doesn't feel that difference. People with Parkinson's, you stand up, blood pools in legs, blood pressure drops, but your heart doesn't sense it because the Parkinson's has disconnected the heart from the blood pressure. And so your heart is going, I don't know really what's happening. Your brain is saying, give me blood now. I'm going to knock you to the floor. Easiest way for your brain to get blood is to have your head lower than your feet. And that's what it's trying to do. So for your sake, if you're getting dizzy and you're falling, or you're getting dizzy and you're passing out, you take your blood pressure daily. You take your blood pressure seated. You stand up, and up to 3 minutes later, take your blood pressure again while you're standing and record those numbers and record your heart rate, and then take that to your doctor. And the easiest way to fix some of these things, medication adjustment, dietary adjustment. Those are some of the easiest ways, and it stops a lot of the falls. So those are the two easiest and two most common ways people die in association with Parkinson's. The rest of the time, something else is going to get you. That's the way we always talk about it, right? One other quick thing that I wanted to address, um, a happier note, exercise. Um, I wish I had a different name for it. Exercise is the true treatment of Parkinson's. And exercise is not going from your bedroom to your bathroom to your sofa and just kind of going around the house. You need dedicated exercise. That is what's going to keep you as good as you can be for as long as you can be. So again, reach out to your physical therapist, reach out to your support groups or exercise groups, even community groups, get into gyms, things like that, home gyms if you want. But exercise is needed and exercise is needed daily. So that's what I've got. Chris, do you have questions brewing?
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation. Lots of great information for people and helps clarify some things because I know it's a lot of information and I know it gets confusing for people, especially with all the new meds that come out and what do they do and which one is which and are they like, and then even with the surgeries and stuff. So I think that was wonderful. One of the questions is if Crexont does not seem to make a difference, is there another best option? And do any of these options help dizziness?
So that is a loaded question, and it is simply that what is the dizzy, right? And so dizziness, again, if it's coming from blood pressure drops, that's what we need to know about. So if it's causing you to drop your blood pressure and you're getting dizzy, then I would say we need to adjust the medication because again, the higher the peak, the more your blood pressure drops of the dopamine. So Crexont may not be the best if you're dropping your blood pressure at that peak. There are lots of other medications and combinations of meds that certainly could be using if Crexont's not making the difference. Somebody that I saw recently, they were on Crexont and they weren't sure. And so I'm switching them back to immediate release carbidopa levodopa because that drug, you can feel how it works. And that's where with that one, with that particular person, I'm switching them back just to see, what do they actually need? And that might be something that your doctor does. So yes, there are lots of other medications out there, and there are lots of different ways to fix the dizzy.
Okay. And do in any of the surgeries you just talked about or the two medications you just talked about, they don't help with the urinary issues also related to Parkinson's in addition to the other Parkinson's issues they'll help with, correct?
Unfortunately, no. So with urinary issues, so all the things that we treat in Parkinson's, so sometimes eyes, urine, constipation, things like that, we do the same thing that you would even if it wasn't coming from Parkinson's. Unfortunately, our devices don't work. So for urinary issues, it won't work. To fix the eyes, it won't work, or double vision. To fix constipation, it's not going to do the job. So the pills, the pumps, and the deep brain stimulation won't fix that stuff.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you, Dr. Schaefer. We appreciate all the time and effort you put into getting us all that great information. Um, and then if anybody does have more questions on any of these topics, we're certainly able to get you some more information detailed on each one in a much greater detail than Dr. Schaefer was able to go into today. So thank you again for everybody for coming. We appreciate it. Everybody have a great afternoon and a wonderful weekend.